So we finally learn what happened between Rizel and Frankenstein back in the day. And without a doubt, this was a compelling episode and a compelling backstory that really does elevate what the series is and what it can do in the future going forward with its remaining episodes and hopefully a season 2 down the road. I do want to quickly mention I am suffering from a sore throat and not feeling that great, so if I'm not super enthusiastic or if my voice is quieter than usual, it's not because I don't like the episode or anything, it's just I'm trying to save up my energy because it's taken a lot to make the videos today, but I'm pushing through. This week's episode I thought was really solid across the board. At first I was a little disappointed because, we get this interaction, it's the first interaction they've ever had, and we almost immediately skip 5 years after he says, "This is my servant," and it just, at first, was a little jarring. I'm not sure if in the webtoon you get more interactions before that time skip or not. Either way, I think I would have preferred like a mini montage, like a few minutes of just seeing the interactions and the reluctant interactions, because Frankenstein was pretty much on death's doorstep, and this was the saving grace after mistaking him as a commoner and then realizing that's the master of the house who just saved his life. Though I will say, I quickly was fine not seeing that after the episode got going. It's just at first, you kind of just assume there's going to be a really big interaction, and then 5 years pass and he's still just kind of being a butler to this guy who is really holed up in a house and only leaves once in a blue moon. It's very interesting seeing the idea of pacts in this series, especially considering that you kind of assume that they're this evil, menacing pact where the Lord at the time was really a genuine guy by the looks of it, and it's interesting to see how they're explained as him and Rizel are almost like father and son, brother and brother. It's this unbreakable bond that one can't really serve without the other, so Rizel pretty much not choosing to stick by the Lord probably is what removed the Lord by the looks of the end of the episode after, old man comes back to report on his findings. The female lord doesn't take any shit by the looks of it, and I don't know if that's the daughter of the previous lord or what, but still, there's going to be some hostility and some anger with the final few episodes by the looks of it, especially considering that one man was fine leaving these kids to, go to the school until a certain point, and the others are just going to try to drag them back by force. It definitely feels like we're building up to some sort of conflict, which would be completely fine in my books, because the fight scenes, just look in this episode, are completely batshit insane. But to see the idea of, you could probably argue it's a pretty slow-paced episode, but it felt like so much was happening that it never felt dry or boring, but rather you were just watching something that was completely exhilarating. The idea of this man who is just hates the nobles so much that he's experimented on himself to be able to do abilities that they can use without the need of kind of like sucking out human life or things like that. And it's so fascinating to see someone who probably doesn't necessarily love Rizel, but doesn't hate him either because he's so just concerned about what his deal is, because for him, he knows what these people are capable of, but he also feels like this is probably the most tame noble he's ever met, not knowing that he is the Noblesse. The idea that he just makes this guy tea for 5 years basically, probably doesn't do anything else, but tea for Rizel is the one thing that brings him happiness, else he just stares out a window all day and all night. It's definitely a very lonely life, and someone who doesn't give off much emotion. It's very interesting to see other characters react to his basically lifestyle. Someone who doesn't go out, someone who doesn't do anything or interact with anyone. The fact that there's someone who loves him so much and so dearly, who sits on a throne wanting what's best for him and doesn't even care if it costs him his own life. He just wants him to be happy, and he sees that Frankenstein is going to be that person. For whatever reason, he takes an interest in this character and wants to probably form a blood pact. And the interesting thing about blood pacts in this show is that generally when you have any sort of like vampire-like story, and I know they're not vampires, but a lot of the characteristics are very similar, so that's why I'm comparing them. Generally it's, they suck the blood or they drink the blood, whatever it is, and the pact is formed. Here it has to be a mutual pact where both master and servant want it equally. So Rizel at the end of the episode, giving up once again some of his life force to stop Frankenstein and give him a chance to cool down. He's accepting him as his servant, but it's not until Frankenstein gives blood to the tea that he drinks that the pact can be formed. It's interesting because at first, the 5-year time skip, you kind of think it's drastic and it's jarring because you didn't get to see any character building in those 5 years. But then you kind of realize that the 5 years probably wasn't much character building at all. They were just kind of a reluctant pair, one more so than the other. But to have that moment in the rest of the episode to build up this sort of bond to then the drinking of the blood to form this pact, it really does go to show how someone starts off as such a killer becomes someone so loyal to someone like, obviously, Rizel. This really does feel like where Noblesse really starts to get going and gets the ball moving. Up until now, I've enjoyed my time, don't get me wrong, but you can really tell that this is where the story and the characters really start to kick off, and honestly, the sky seems to be the limit with what they've introduced so far. The action was really interesting. It's interesting seeing Frankenstein at a pretty early age with his ability unable to control it, and then seeing him completely consumed at the end, and then seeing the Lord and Rizel kind of stand up to each side that they're kind of commanding. It's interesting that it feels like so much is happening, but you can call this a very dry backstory episode. When you break it down in technical terms, not much happens. You're interacting with someone who drinks tea. You're interacting with a world that's hating you, but not much happens. But it's so exciting. It's so exhilarating because everything that we've experienced up until this point with Noblesse, so many people have shit on. So many people have said is not for them, but I've loved it, and many of us have loved it who are probably watching these reviews. And to see an episode like this that really puts into perspective what made that bond so unbreakable, you look back at a lot of the previous actions with Frankenstein and Rizel, and you kind of see them in different lights now. You see how each of them saved the other from a world of loneliness and death and despair, and now they walk the earth together. It's understandable why Frankenstein waited so long. He's had so many opportunities to run and never did because of how much he trusts in him. It's not even that the bond by blood is what actually keeps him there. It's actually an emotional connection that they formed that really keeps him there. The blood oath means honestly nothing besides the fact that he gets to live a lot longer now. It's very fascinating to see a type of character like Rizel, who normally would be this hotshot, beats the enemy and things like that, but really he just wants to enjoy a nice comfy life surrounded by humans and nobles alike, where he can drink tea and be entertained. It's interesting how this is a character who lived in a mansion alone and probably quite sad his entire life, who now in modern day is living a life of luxury, where before you probably thought that was luxury, but clearly that to him is what is. A bunch of friends that he can, even though he doesn't smile too much or say too much, there's so much emotion being conveyed in those final moments of the episode that really is interesting. To have a character who doesn't show any reactions, but being able to convey those reactions with different means and characters' words and actions, it's really interesting to me. It's just such a fascinating, amazing episode. Combined with last week, this is the best point of the Noblesse TV anime to date, hands down. Not only because there's some great action and just across the board you get this amazing characterization that puts into perspective both Frankenstein and Rizel so much more. It just feels like this is the turning point to see that everything that we've seen up until this point, you want it to last, and now you know it can't last. So it really gets you this emotional connection that you know is doomed for failure. And that's what's so fascinating about this story. It's so unconventional. It doesn't follow any real formula that I've seen before. All the webtoons that have come out, whether you've liked them or not, they all have a unique formula that just is so different than normal anime. And that's what makes the webtoon trilogy so fascinating to me, and why I want them all to continue equally, because there's something interesting, even if they're not perfect, and there definitely is some that are worse than others, don't get me wrong, but it's so interesting to see the different ideas and how different cultures can craft such an anime-like story, but do it in such a fresh coat of paint, and I really hope all three continue, to be honest, but Noblesse is definitely my second favorite out of the three. I just really like it. I think the characters are amazing, and just honestly, I just don't know where we're going to go with the final few episodes. It feels like conflict, but at the same time, is Rizel going to give up more of his life to stop said conflict? I really don't know. Let me know your thoughts and feelings, and definitely your theories down below. What did you think, and what do you think of the backstory across the board? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.